An advanced degree in computer science may not necessarily be considered the makings for a creative leaning that so refreshingly understands photographic geometry, light and composition, but Ross Harvey's invention behind the lens is something he attributes to both his, quote, inner geek and 8 years spent in graphic design. He collects both awards and air miles in equal measure, it seems, as he photographs weddings and unfolding street scenes around the world.
Photography started as a hobby for me. I originally bought an old camera on eBay for like £600 at the time, which is, thinking back, was quite expensive. It was an old Canon. But it was something that completely intrigued me because the freedom it gives you is incredible. And I love the process of taking pictures and editing them. One of the challenges of photography is clutter and how to hide clutter. And this image is a perfect example of the end product looking nothing like the situation it was taken in. The couple were asked to come outside, probably at around 11:30 in the evening. They were both very tipsy, and I asked them to stand under this tree because of these wonderful lights that were decorating it. But the thing about the tree is there was a barbecue next to it, and the barbecue was around here, and it was completely messy. I mean, there was rubbish everywhere, and in the background here you could see a car park with lorries, vans from professionals who were working there and also from guests. And so when the couple stood under this tree and they had a little kiss and a flash popped behind them, they had no idea that this would be the end product. And I have used Lightroom and Photoshop to get rid of a few elements and clean it up slightly. But this is the kind of shot that a couple will think is magic, because from their experience it was just a simple kiss under a tree with a little flash next to them. But when they see it, it's completely different to their expectations. So it's the sort of shot that raises your work above their expectations creatively. The awards and the accolades are important with regards to a representation of the effort that I've put in with photography. It's more so to do with the results for other people that I get most reward. I had an email from a bride literally on Christmas Day, and she was explaining how happy she was that we'd become friends and what a difference that the photography has made to her life, because she suffers with an illness that comes back quite often, and she gets a lot of strength at looking at her photography, herself and her wedding pictures, and to have that kind of emotional power with someone is just incredible. Gary and Carlos are just fantastic people. We became really good friends, and I've seen them since the wedding for lunch and whatnot. And when I visit London, I try and make as much effort as I can to visit these guys. They were very shy, and for them to kiss and hold in public was very special, and it was great to witness them open up, and they sort of protected each other. And that's what I love about this, because they're within this fantastic geometrical structure, and because of their beautiful coloured waistcoats, I sneakily added the same colour with a gradient to the structure just to give it that extra kick and consistency throughout the frame. Highlights and shadows are one of my favourite techniques as such to use for photography, and this exemplifies that perfectly. It's all about using photographic techniques but with emotion, and making people laugh, I think, is incredibly important for portraits, because I love it when couples look back at their pictures and they're smiling, because it makes them smile, because we're empathic human beings. It fires the mirror neurons in the brain when you see someone happy. When it's yourself, it's even more effective. And you can use light in such simplistic manners that are very, very graphical and very, very pleasing on the eye in composition. And it's a very simple technique, combining highlights and shadows differently on the foreground and the background. And again, to reference clutter, this was in a library, and there was signs on the door, there was posters on the wall. It was completely messy, but as long as I had those two pieces of light, I could do exactly what I wanted to do. And he's actually standing on a chair to get high enough to be a shadow in front of this highlight, and he's holding the door handle to give him that edge to point down towards his new wife. Most of my inspiration nowadays comes from film and nature and people, actually. Inspiration seeing people happy is one of them, but films I have to get credit for. People like Kubrick, who shot everything straight on, which influenced people like Wes Anderson. Wes Anderson's my favourite director in terms of cinematography. He shoots everything straight on or at 90 degrees, and that perspective can be quite stiff sometimes, but it can work really, really well when used correctly. Street photography is a massive passion of mine because you have to really think on your feet and you have zero control over people. It's completely organic, it's completely in the moment, and you really have to have your wits about you to look for juxtaposition, abstract shots, emotion, and then to combine them all, especially with lighting techniques, is incredibly difficult. And I found that my wedding photography skills have gone up exponentially when I started shooting street photography. This image in particular highlights all of those things for me, and it's actually my favorite image that I've ever taken in any context, including weddings, because there's just so much going on. You have a juxtaposition between the guy in the foreground and the guys in the background, not only in the terms of how they are dressed and how they look, in other words, the culture, but also the lighting. The silhouette foreground guy is dark. These guys who are in suits and business suits are fully lit. But not only that, there's juxtaposition between the people and the background, because it looks like some sort of science fiction scene. And yet you have this guy who might be a science fiction character, but then you have the workers dressed in suits, and it just doesn't make any sense. And to paraphrase a great quote from Alex Webb, is that images that make you think are far more valuable than ones that are just a quick fix. And another example of that is this image, another favourite of mine, which has been printed in a few magazines actually. And the silhouette of the hand is bringing the boy into the frame, who's actually sitting behind the wheel inside this van. But again, without knowing technically what's going on, it makes your mind freeze when you see it. If it's a photojournalistic image, I like to keep it as real as I can. I will do very minimal editing. I will clean up backgrounds that I couldn't do in camera, like for example a fire hydrant. But if it's a creative image in terms of a portrait or something very abstract, I will manipulate it as much as I feel necessary, and I have no hesitation whatsoever in completely changing an image if the end result is exactly what I want it to be. This image exemplifies the creative photojournalism viewpoint, in my opinion. It tells a story, but it does so very creatively. Again, it's based on highlights and shadows, which, if you haven't guessed already, is one of my favourite techniques to use. But it also has movement, and it tells a fantastic story. The background is in focus, it's the colourful part of the image, and hence it's almost, I hate to say it, like a spot colour without the spot. It's just the background is completely beautiful, really. They were actually walking up a hill and he was catching her up, and I waited until they were both framed with space around them so they stuck out from the background. Another example is this. I tend not to blog these so much, but that's the sort of image that I take all the time. I use a 35mm and I get in close when I'm doing photojournalistic sort of documentary photography, because I was actually speaking to these guys with a drink in my hand and the camera in the other, and so we just started giggling and laughing, and they completely relaxed in front of me at this point. So we start laughing about football. This guy on the left takes the mick out of the guy in the middle, who just bursts out laughing, and because I'm already there and I'm part of the group, they're not conscious at all of me having a camera, so I just 35mm to the eye, take the shot, and that's one of my favourites from the wedding. There is a huge push in wedding photography at the moment, especially creatively. There are so many people picking up a camera and wishing to get into the industry. In the sea of sameness, do something different. Don't copy someone else. Have your own voice and have a reason as to why you're shooting. Don't just shoot weddings for the money or for the sake of it. Have a goal with it. Have a goal that's spiritually or psychologically satisfying to you in terms of what you're offering for other people, giving a service to others. And that will drive you really, really passionately, because it's something that's important to other people. And the other piece of advice I give people is that settings are secondary. Don't get caught up on the camera settings, because the picture itself is far more important, and it doesn't matter what aperture it's taken at. Do you want a blurred background or not? Yes or no? Are you trying to tell the context of an image with an environment? Yes or no? That's how you set your aperture. And it doesn't matter if one of your favourite images uses f8 and yours was shot at f2, it doesn't matter whatsoever. It's all about the emotional content. To have people appreciate your vision and your take on life is incredibly important to me, and I'm very, very grateful for it.